Welcome back to Tina Romance Library, where powerful alphas fall hard, and the women they underestimate change everything. Every story here is complete, immersive, and emotion-driven. No cliffhangers, no rushed endings, just full romances you can sink into. So if you love possessive alphas, strong heroines who don't beg, slow burn tension, emotional payoffs, and stories that actually finish, you're in the right place. I need you to join the pack right now by subscribing. Leave a like if you enjoy immersive romance, and settle in because once the story begins, we don't stop until the ending. Now, let's get into it. I never believed in fate. Not the kind the wolves whispered about in their sacred groves, not the kind sung in old ballads by firelight. Fate was for people who had packs, who had families that stretched back generations with roots so deep they touched the bones of the earth. Fate was for those who belonged to something bigger than themselves. I was just Iris, a human, an apothecary, a woman who ground lavender into powder and spoke to rosemary like it might answer back. And on that particular morning, that morning I had no idea that fate had already marked me, that it was barreling toward me on 4 tiny paws, and would shatter the careful, quiet life I'd built like it was made of glass. Let me take you back. Let me show you who I was before everything changed. Willowmere wasn't much to look at if you were passing through. Just another border town nestled between human settlements and wolf territories. The kind of place where people kept their heads down and their questions to themselves. The buildings leaned together like old friends sharing secrets. All weathered wood and stone worn smooth by generations of hands. My shop sat on the corner of the main square, a crooked little thing with dried herbs hanging in the windows and a sign that read, "Moon Petal Remedies" in fading paint. I'd bought it with everything I had 3 years ago. Every coin I'd saved, every desperate hour I'd worked in the city before I couldn't stand the noise and the crowds and the way people looked right through me like I was made of mist. Here, I had purpose. Here, I had peace. Or at least, I had convinced myself I did. My days followed a rhythm as predictable as breathing. I woke before dawn to check my drying racks, crushed seeds for salves, brewed tinctures that filled the air with the sharp sweetness of echinacea and elderflower. The wolves came sometimes, mostly the lower-ranked ones, the omegas and the outcasts who didn't want to bother their pack healers with minor ailments. They paid in game or firewood or sometimes just gratitude, and I never asked questions about the scars they wanted hidden or the wounds they couldn't explain. Humans came too. The old woman with the bad hip, the merchant's daughter with the persistent cough, the farmer whose hands shook from working too hard in the cold. I helped them all. I listened to their gossip, who was courting whom, which pack had been seen hunting closer to town, whether the winter would be harsh. I smiled and nodded and measured out their remedies. And when they left, I went back to my silence. The silence never bothered me. That's what I told myself every single day. I had my plants. I had my work. I had the satisfaction of knowing that when someone walked out of my shop, they walked out feeling better than when they arrived. What more could I possibly need? But late at night, when the shop was dark and the only sound was the wind testing my shutters, my hands would still sometimes reach across the bed, searching for warmth that wasn't there. My ears would still strain for the sound of footsteps on my stairs, a voice calling my name, someone coming home to me. I'd pull my hand back, curl into myself, remind myself that loneliness was just a feeling, and feelings passed like seasons. I didn't need more than this. I didn't. But my heart, my foolish, stubborn heart, kept a candle burning in the window anyway, kept listening for something I couldn't even name. That morning started like any other. I tied my chestnut hair back with a piece of worn ribbon, pulled on my simplest dress, the brown one with the patched hem, and headed to the marketplace with my basket over my arm. I needed garlic for a poultice and honey if the beekeeper had any left, and I was hoping to trade some of my chamomile tea for fresh bread because I'd been too busy to bake and eating stale crusts was getting old. The market was already bustling, full of that particular energy that comes when people are trying to finish their business before the afternoon heat sets in. Vendors called out their wares, children darted between stalls, and the smell of fresh pastries mixed with leather and livestock in a way that should have been unpleasant but somehow felt like home. I was examining a bunch of thyme, haggling half-heartedly with the herb seller, when I felt it. A shift in the air. A change. Like the moment before lightning strikes, when every hair on your body rises and the world holds its breath. I looked up, and then she crashed into me. A wolf pup, no. A child. A little girl. Maybe 5 or 6 years old. Mid-shift with fur still rippling down her arms and panic in her enormous amber eyes. She hit me hard enough that I staggered, my basket flying, herbs scattering across the cobblestones like scattered prayers. But I didn't fall. I caught her. My arms closed around her small, trembling body on pure instinct, and she buried her face against my chest with a sound that was half sob, half whimper. "Please," she whispered, her voice so small it barely reached my ears. "Please, hide me." I should have asked questions. I should have looked around for her parents, for whoever was responsible for this terrified child who was shaking so hard I could feel it in my bones. I didn't. Something ancient and absolute rose up inside me, something that had no business living in my wolfless human body. Every protective instinct I'd never had cause to use surged forward like a dam breaking, and before my rational mind could even form a thought, I was moving. I pulled her behind my skirts, wrapped my shawl around her small shoulders, tucked her against my legs where the fabric would hide her. My heart was slamming against my ribs so hard it hurt, and my hands, my steady healer's hands that never trembled when I worked, were shaking as I smoothed down my dress and tried to look like everything was normal. I didn't even know her name. I didn't know what she was running from or why she'd chosen me out of everyone in that crowded market. But it didn't matter. She was mine to protect now. I felt it with a certainty that defied logic, that lived somewhere deeper than thought. And then the world went silent. Not literally, people were still talking, merchants still calling, carts still rattling over stone. But something changed in the quality of the air itself, in the weight of it, and one by one, everyone stopped what they were doing. They turned. They looked toward the north road, and then they bowed. I'd never seen wolves bow before. Not the proud ones, not the warriors who came through town with their heads high and their eyes challenging anyone to meet their gaze. But they bowed now, dropped their heads, lowered their eyes, pressed their fists to their hearts in a gesture of absolute submission. The humans didn't bow, but they backed away, created space, melted to the edges of the square like water parting before stone. He came into view like a force of nature given form, the Alpha King. I'd heard of him, of course. Everyone had. Caius Thorncliffe, ruler of the northern packs, the king whose bloodline stretched back to the first wolves who'd walked this land. They said he was ruthless, fair, but merciless to those who crossed him. They said his wolf was massive, black as midnight, with eyes that glowed like molten gold. They said a lot of things. None of them prepared me for the reality of him. He was tall, taller than any man I'd ever seen, with shoulders broad enough to block out the sun. His hair was dark, almost black, windswept and longer than fashion dictated. He wore black leather and fur despite the warmth of the day, and power radiated off him in waves so tangible I could feel them from 20 paces away. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Golden, not amber, not yellow true gold, like coins catching firelight, like honey in sunlight, like something precious and dangerous all at once. And they found mine, held. The noise of the market faded to nothing. The people, the stalls, the whole world might have vanished for all I knew. There was only that gaze, heavy and searching, pinning me in place with an intensity that made my skin prickle and my pulse spike. I felt fear, yes. Any sane person would have felt fear standing in the sights of a predator like that. But beneath the fear, threaded through it like gold through quartz, was something else. Something hot and sharp and utterly unexpected. Fascination, recognition, a pull so strong it felt like gravity had shifted and I was falling up instead of down. His nostrils flared slightly. His head tilted just a fraction, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or confusion before his expression locked down into carved stone. He walked forward. The crowd parted like he was Moses and they were the sea. His warriors flanked him, massive men with weapons and hard faces, but I couldn't look at them. Couldn't look at anything but him as he approached. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell him, pine and snow and something wild that had no name. A child came through here. His voice was deep, resonant, the kind of voice that made you want to obey even if you didn't understand the words. A pup, dark fur, amber eyes. She's scared. She's mine. He wasn't asking. Alpha Kings didn't ask. Behind my skirts, the little girl went rigid with fear. Her tiny fingers dug into my calf through the fabric. I should have handed her over. This was the Alpha King. You didn't lie to him. You didn't defy him. You certainly didn't keep his property hidden behind your worn-out dress while looking him in his impossible eyes. But my body didn't care about should. My heart didn't care about logic. My chin came up. My shoulders straightened. And when I spoke, my voice was steady even though everything inside me was screaming. I haven't seen any pups, Your Majesty. The lie tasted like ash on my tongue. His eyes narrowed. Something dangerous flickered in their depths. Not anger exactly. Something more complex. More interested. No? He took 1 step closer. Now I could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the barely contained power in the way he held himself still. You're certain? Heat flooded my face, but I held his gaze, refused to look away even though every instinct screamed at me to submit, to drop my eyes, to give him what he wanted. I'm certain. A long moment stretched between us. The market had gone so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Then slowly, so slowly, one corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile. Something more predatory. Interesting, he murmured, and the words slid down my spine like a touch. He stepped back, gestured to his warriors. Search the market. Every stall, every shop. Find her. My blood turned to ice, but I didn't move, didn't flinch. As he turned away, his eyes found mine one last time, and in them I saw a promise that made my breath catch. This isn't over. I stood frozen in the center of the market square, watching his broad back as he walked away, every muscle in my body coiled tight as a bowstring. The child behind my skirts had gone so still I could barely feel her breathing, and my mind was racing through 1,000 scenarios, none of them good. His warriors were already moving, spreading out through the market like wolves on a hunt. They would search everywhere. They would find her. And when they did, the Alpha King stopped. He didn't turn around, but his head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something only he could hear. Then, slowly, deliberately, he turned back to face me, and started walking, straight toward me. Every step was measured, controlled, the movement of a predator who knew exactly what he was and didn't need to rush because nothing could escape him anyway. The crowd melted away from his path, people stumbling over themselves to get out of his way. But I couldn't move. My feet had grown roots into the cobblestones. He didn't stop until he was close. Too close. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that the heat of him radiated against my skin like standing near a fire. And then his scent hit me. Gods, they should have warned me about that. Pine and winter storms and something metallic like steel heated in a forge. It wrapped around me, invaded my lungs, made something deep in my belly clench with an awareness I had no business feeling. This was the Alpha King. This was danger in its purest form. I should have been terrified. I was terrified. But beneath the terror was something else entirely. Something that made my skin feel too tight and my blood run too hot. You're lying to me. His voice was lower now, quieter, meant only for my ears. Not angry, curious. Why would a human apothecary lie to an Alpha King? My throat was dry. I swallowed hard, felt the movement of it, knew he watched it happen. I don't know what you mean, Your Majesty. Don't you? He leaned in fractionally, and I caught the flash of something in his golden eyes. Not quite amusement, darker than that, more interested. Your heart is racing. I can hear it from here. You're afraid, but you're not backing down. He was right. I should have backed down, should have dropped my eyes, stepped away, given him space. That's what you did with predators. You made yourself small, unthreatening. But the child behind me was counting on me. She'd chosen me for some reason I didn't understand, thrown herself into my arms and begged me to hide her, and I'd be damned if I betrayed that trust because some impossibly powerful, devastatingly dangerous man was standing too close and smelling too good, and looking at me like I was a puzzle he wanted to solve. So I lifted my chin higher, met his gaze straight on. Should I be backing down? Something flashed across his face, surprise, definitely surprise. His eyebrows rose a fraction, and then that almost smile returned, a little wider this time, showing a hint of teeth that were just slightly too sharp to be entirely human. Around us, I heard a few sharp intakes of breath. Someone muttered something that sounded like a prayer. Apparently, you didn't sass the Alpha King. Good to know. Too late now. Bold, he murmured, and the word felt like a caress and a threat all at once. Foolish, perhaps, but bold. He shifted his weight, and I realized he was deliberately positioning himself between me and the rest of the market, blocking their view. When someone a merchant I vaguely recognized turned to look at us with open curiosity, the Alpha King's head snapped toward him, and a sound rumbled from his chest that wasn't quite a growl but close enough. The merchant went pale and found somewhere else to be very quickly. I blinked. Had he just protected me from their stares? You could try asking nicely, I heard myself say, and immediately wanted to bite my tongue off. What was wrong with me? Why couldn't I just keep my mouth shut? But he laughed. Actually laughed, a low, rough sound that seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised me. It transformed his face completely, softening the harsh lines, crinkling the corners of those impossible eyes, making him look younger and more human, and somehow even more dangerous because now I could see the man beneath the crown. Nicely, he repeated, like he was testing out a foreign word. When was the last time anyone asked me to do anything nicely? Maybe that's the problem. The words were out before I could stop them, quiet but clear. His smile faded, but something else took its place in his expression. Something thoughtful, assessing. He studied me for a long moment, and I had the unsettling feeling he was seeing far more than I wanted him to see. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. "Iris. Iris." He said it slowly, like he was memorizing it. "Do you know who I am, Iris? Everyone knows who you are, Your Majesty, and yet you're still lying to me." I opened my mouth, closed it, had no idea what to say that wouldn't dig me deeper into whatever hole I'd already created. He sighed. Actually sighed, a very human sound of frustration, and dragged a hand through his dark hair. The gesture was so unexpected, so normal, that I almost forgot to be afraid. "I need to find that pup," he said, and this time his voice was different, softer, almost tired. "She's not in trouble. She's scared, and she ran, and I need to bring her home safely before something happens to her." Behind my skirts, I felt the child trembling. Her little fingers were still digging into my calf. I wanted to believe him. Gods, some part of me desperately wanted to believe that this powerful, terrifying man was actually concerned about a frightened child. But I'd seen how wolves treated their young, most of them. Anyway, harsh discipline, rigid hierarchy, obedience above all else. "What will happen to her?" I asked quietly. "When you find her," something flickered in his eyes. "That depends on why she ran. And if she doesn't want to go back? She's a child. She doesn't get to make that choice. Everyone deserves a choice." His jaw tightened. "Not in my world." We stared at each other, and I could feel the fundamental difference between us like a wall made of stone. He was Alpha, born to command, to control, to make decisions for everyone under his rule. I was human, raised to believe that freedom mattered more than order, that kindness could be stronger than force. We were never going to agree on this. But then he did something I didn't expect. He turned his head slightly, his gaze dropping to where my skirts pooled on the ground. to where a small child was definitely hiding. He had to know. There was no way his wolf senses hadn't told him exactly where she was. "She's terrified," he said, so quietly I almost didn't hear him. "I can feel it from here." "Yes." "Of me?" I hesitated. "Of being found." He was silent for a long moment, and I watched emotions play across his face too quickly to name. Then he straightened, rolled his shoulders back, and the Alpha King mask settled back into place. But his voice, when he spoke, was gentler than before. "I'll make you a deal, Iris the apothecary." My heart kicked against my ribs. "What kind of deal?" "Let me speak with her. Just speak. If she wants to come with me, she comes. If she doesn't—" He paused, and something like pain crossed his features. "Then I'll leave her with you. Temporarily. Until we can figure out what she's running from." I stared at him. "You'd do that? Just leave her with a stranger?" "You're not a stranger. Not to her." His golden eyes found mine again, and the intensity in them stole my breath. "She chose you. For some reason I don't understand yet, she felt safe enough to run to you. To ask you, a human with no pack, no protection, to hide her from me." He smiled, but it was sad around the edges. "Do you have any idea how rare that is? How impossible it should be?" I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process the rawness in his voice, the vulnerability he was showing me despite the dozens of people watching us from the edges of the square. Before I could answer, he was moving. Not toward me, but away, turning to call out to his warriors. "Stand down. We're done here." They hesitated, clearly confused, but one sharp look from him had them falling back, forming up behind him in disciplined ranks. Then he did something that made my breath catch. He unfastened the heavy cloak from around his shoulders, black fur and leather, probably worth more than my entire shop, and held it out to me. "For the pup," he said. "It's getting cold and she's only wearing a shift." I took it automatically, and our fingers brushed. Just for a second. Just the barest touch of skin against skin. But I felt it everywhere. A jolt like lightning, like touching something forbidden, something that burned bright enough to leave marks. His eyes widened fractionally, and I knew he felt it too, this impossible, inexplicable thing crackling between us. He pulled his hand back like I'd scalded him. "I'll return tonight," he said, his voice rough. "To your shop, to speak with her." "How do you know where my shop is?" That almost smile again. "I'm the Alpha King, Iris. I know everything that happens in my territories." He paused. "And I pay attention to what's important." The way he said it, the way he looked at me when he said it, made heat flood my face and something dangerous flutter in my chest. Then he was turning away, striding back toward his warriors, leaving me standing there with his cloak in my hands and my heart beating so hard I felt dizzy. As he reached the edge of the square, he glanced back once. Our eyes met across the distance, and I felt the weight of that gaze like a physical touch. That was when I realized the Alpha King was paying attention. To me. The walk back to my shop felt like moving through a dream. Or maybe a nightmare. I couldn't quite tell which. The child emerged from behind my skirts once we were clear of the market, and I wrapped the Alpha King's cloak around her small shoulders. It dragged on the ground behind her, far too large, but she burrowed into it like it was the safest place in the world. "What's your name, sweetheart?" I asked gently as we walked. She looked up at me with those huge amber eyes. "Lyra." "That's beautiful. I'm Iris." "I know." Her voice was so small. "I've been watching you, from the woods sometimes. You sing when you work." My heart clenched. "You have? For how long?" "Weeks. Maybe months. You're nice to everyone, even the mean people." She slipped her tiny hand into mine. "I wanted to be brave like you. Gods, this child, this impossibly sweet, terrified child who'd been watching me from the shadows, learning about me, deciding I was safe. You are brave, Lyra. So brave. Do you want to tell me why you ran?" She shook her head hard. "Can't. Not yet. They'll be angry." "Who will be angry?" But she pressed her lips together and wouldn't say more. I didn't push. We walked the rest of the way in silence, And when we reached my shop, I unlocked the door and ushered her inside quickly, glancing around to make sure no one had followed. The shop felt different with her in it. Smaller, warmer. She stood in the middle of the floor, still wrapped in that enormous cloak, looking around at the dried herbs and bottles with wide, curious eyes. "Are you hungry?" I asked. She nodded. I made her bread and honey and chamomile tea, and she ate like she'd been starving, cramming food into her mouth so fast I worried she'd choke. I sat across from her at my small table and just watched, my mind whirling. What had I gotten myself into? Harboring a runaway wolf pup, the Alpha King's pup, apparently. This could start a war. This could get me killed. But when Lyra looked up at me with honey on her chin and smiled, actually smiled, bright and trusting, I knew I'd do it all again. "Bath time," I announced when she'd finished eating. "You're covered in dirt and leaves." I heated water in the big copper basin I used for mixing tinctures, added some lavender oil to help her relax, and helped her undress. She had bruises on her arms, old ones fading to yellow-green. My healer's instincts flared. "Lyra, did someone hurt you?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Training. We train hard. Have to be strong." The way she said it flat, reciting something she'd been told, made my chest ache. I bathed her gently, carefully, washing the grime from her skin and the tangles from her dark hair. She relaxed under my hands, leaning into the touch like she was starved for gentleness. And by the time I lifted her out and wrapped her in a clean towel, she was half asleep. I had no children's clothes, so I dressed her in one of my shift dresses, tied with a belt to keep it from falling off. She looked tiny and lost in it, but she didn't complain. "Where will I sleep?" she asked, yawning. "With me. In my bed upstairs. Is that all right?" She nodded, and when I led her up to my small bedroom, she climbed into the bed and curled into a tight ball, still clutching the edge of the Alpha King's cloak. I sat beside her, stroking her hair, humming the tune I apparently sang while I worked. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing deep and even, her face peaceful. And sitting there in the golden afternoon light, with this child who'd chosen me for reasons I didn't understand, I felt something shift in my chest, something fierce and protective and absolute. "Mine," something whispered. "Mine to protect, mine to keep safe, even if it meant standing against the most powerful wolf in the realm." Night fell. I lit candles throughout the shop, more for comfort than necessity, and tried to keep busy. Organizing bottles that didn't need organizing, sweeping floors that were already clean. Anything to stop thinking about the fact that the Alpha King was coming here, tonight, to my shop. Lyra slept on upstairs, exhausted from fear and running and whatever had happened to her before she found me. I was grinding dried mint for absolutely no reason except to have something to do with my hands when I felt it. That shift in the air, that sense of presence. I set down the mortar and pestle just as a knock sounded at my door. 3 precise raps, controlled, patient. I wiped my hands on my apron, tried to calm my racing heart, and opened the door. He stood there in the darkness, somehow looking even larger without his cloak, backlit by moonlight that turned his dark hair silver at the edges. He'd left his warriors somewhere I couldn't see them, but I had no doubt they were close. "Your Majesty," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Caius," he corrected quietly. "When it's just us, you can call me Caius." The intimacy of that of him offering me his name made my stomach flutter. I stepped back, and he entered my shop, having to duck slightly to clear the doorframe. He looked around, taking in the herbs, the bottles, the careful organization of my life's work. I saw it through his eyes and felt suddenly self-conscious about how small it all was, how humble. But when he looked at me, there was no judgment in his expression, only curiosity. "She's asleep," I said. "Upstairs. I know. I can hear her heartbeat." He paused. "Yours too." Of course he could. Heat crept up my neck. "Would you like tea?" The words tumbled out, a reflex of hospitality. He blinked, clearly not expecting the offer. "Tea?" "Yes. I have chamomile, or peppermint, or I don't drink tea." "Oh," Stupid. Of course an alpha king wouldn't drink tea. I could, but I'll try chamomile, he said. And something in his tone made me look up sharply. He was watching me, really watching me, with an intensity that made me feel naked despite being fully clothed. If you're making some anyway, he added quieter. I turned away before he could see my face and busied myself with the kettle, heating water over my small hearth, measuring out dried flowers with shaking hands. Behind me, I heard him moving. Careful, deliberate sounds. When I glanced back, he'd lowered himself into one of my chairs. It creaked alarmingly under his weight and was looking around the shop again, but differently now, like he was trying to understand something. How long have you lived here? He asked. 3 years. And before? The city. I worked in a hospital there. Why did you leave? I poured hot water over the chamomile, watched the flowers swirl and release their golden color. Too many people. Too much noise. I wanted quiet. Did you find it? I thought I had. The words hung between us, heavy with meaning neither of us spoke aloud. I brought him the tea, and our fingers brushed again when he took the cup. That same jolt of awareness, of something recognizing something in a language I didn't speak. He looked at the tea like it might bite him, then took a cautious sip. His eyebrows rose. It's nice. I almost laughed. The Alpha King, uncertain about chamomile tea. It was so unexpectedly normal that some of my tension eased. You sound surprised. I am. I expected it to taste like... He waved a hand vaguely. Plants. It is plants. You know what I mean. I did know what he meant, and the corner of my mouth twitched despite everything. We sat in silence for a moment, him drinking his tea, me standing because I didn't trust myself to sit that close to him. I could feel his eyes on me even when I wasn't looking, tracking my movements as I tidied things that didn't need tidying. You move well, he said suddenly. Efficiently. Like every motion has purpose. The observation was so unexpected that I stopped, a bottle of tincture halfway to its shelf. Thank you? It's calming to watch. I had no idea what to do with that, so I said nothing and finished putting the bottle away. Iris. His voice was softer now, serious. We need to talk about Lyra. My shoulders tensed. What about her? I wasn't lying earlier. She really isn't in trouble. But I need to know why she ran, and I need to be able to promise her, pack her family, that she's safe. She has bruises. His expression shuddered immediately. From training. She's a child. She's a wolf. Training is how we survive. There's a difference between training and abuse. His jaw clenched. I would never allow abuse. Not in my packs. Not anywhere. The conviction in his voice surprised me. I studied his face, looking for deception, but found only fierce protectiveness that mirrored my own. Then why is she so afraid? I asked quietly. I don't know, but I intend to find out. He set down his teacup and stood, unfolding from the chair with that predatory grace. Will you let me speak with her? Tomorrow, when she's rested. I wanted to say no, wanted to send him away and keep Lyra hidden forever. But that wasn't realistic. And despite everything, despite how dangerous he was, some instinct told me he meant what he said, that he genuinely cared about this child's well-being. Tomorrow, I agreed. But I stay with her. I wouldn't have it any other way. He moved toward the door, and I followed to let him out. But he paused at the threshold, turning back to look at me with an expression I couldn't read. Thank you, he said, for protecting her, for not giving her up even though I terrified you. I wasn't terrified. That almost smile. Liar. And then, before I could respond, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. Just that one gentle touch, his fingers barely grazing my skin. But I felt it like a brand. Good night, Iris. He was gone before I could find my voice, melting into the darkness like he'd never been there at all. I stood in my doorway, my hand pressed to where he'd touched me, my heart a wild thing in my chest. What was happening to me? And why did some traitorous part of me already want him to come back? I didn't sleep. How could I, when every time I closed my eyes I felt phantom fingers brushing my temple, heard that low voice saying my name like it meant something? I lay in bed beside Lyra's small, sleeping form and stared at the ceiling beams, trying to make sense of what was happening to me. This was madness. He was the Alpha King. I was nobody, a human apothecary with no pack, no power, no business, feeling the things I was feeling every time those golden eyes found mine. But my body didn't care about logic. My heart didn't care about the impossibility of it all. I'd felt something when he touched me. Something that went deeper than attraction, deeper than simple desire. Recognition, maybe. Like my soul had been waiting for that specific touch, and finally understood why it had been so restless all these years. I pressed my palms against my eyes and tried to think about anything else. It didn't work. Morning came too soon and not soon enough. I woke to find Lyra already awake, sitting cross-legged on the bed, and watching me with those two wise amber eyes. "He's coming back today, isn't he?" she asked quietly. "Yes, he wants to talk to you." She nodded, unsurprised. "Are you scared of him?" Was I? I thought about that question while I braided my hair, while I helped her wash her face and hands in the basin, while I made us breakfast from the last of my bread and some preserves. "No," I finally said. "I don't think I am. Not anymore." "Good. He's not bad. Just big and loud sometimes." She picked at her food. "Everyone's scared of him. But I don't think he likes that very much." The insight from this child startled me. "What makes you say that?" "I see things. People don't notice me when I'm small." She meant when she was in wolf form, I realized. He gets this look sometimes, like he's lonely even when everyone's there. My chest ached at the image. The Alpha King, surrounded by subjects and warriors and pack members, alone in the crowd. Before I could respond, I felt it again, that awareness, that presence. He was here. I opened the door before he could knock, and found him standing in the early morning light, looking somehow more devastating than he had the night before. He'd forgone the heavy leathers this time, wearing just a simple dark shirt and pants, but it didn't make him any less imposing. If anything, the casual clothes made him seem more dangerous, like a blade unsheathed. "You're early," I said. I couldn't wait. The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it did me. He cleared his throat. "Is she awake?" "Yes." But Caius, I used his name deliberately, saw the way his eyes flared at the sound of it. "Be gentle with her, please." "I will." He paused. "I promise." And I believed him. I let him in, and Lyra came down the stairs slowly, still wearing my oversized shift, her dark hair tangled from sleep. When she saw him, she stopped on the bottom step, and I watched something painful cross his face. He lowered himself to one knee, actually knelt, bringing himself down to her level. "Hello, Lyra," he said softly. "I'm glad you're safe." She didn't run, didn't hide, just studied him with that unnerving directness children have. "You're really tall." His mouth twitched. "Yes, and your eyes are weird." "Lyra," I said, mortified. But Caius laughed, a real laugh this time, surprised out of him. "They are weird," he agreed. "I got them from my father. He had weird eyes too." "Are you mad at me for running?" "No, but I need to understand why you ran. Can you tell me?" She looked at me, and I moved closer, offering my hand. She took it and held on tight. "They were going to send me away," she said, so quietly I almost didn't hear. "To the Eastern Pack, to live there, forever." Caius's expression went very still. "Who told you this?" "I heard them talking, the council members. They said I was the right age, that a political bond needed to be formed, that my mother wouldn't object because she understands duty." Her voice cracked. "I don't want to go away. I don't know anyone there. I want to stay home." I felt rage ignite in my chest, hot and fierce. She was a child, a baby, and they were going to use her like a chess piece, ship her off to strangers for politics? When I looked at Caius, I saw my anger reflected in his face, but colder, deadlier. "What council members?" His voice was very quiet, very controlled. Lyra named them. 3 names I didn't recognize, but clearly he did, because his jaw clenched so hard I heard his teeth grind. "This was not sanctioned by me," he said, and there was a weight to the words that made the air feel heavy. "You understand that, Lyra? I did not approve this. I did not know." "Really?" Hope flickered in her eyes. "Really, you're not going anywhere you don't want to go. I swear it." She studied him for another long moment, then nodded. "Okay, just like that." She believed him. And watching them, this small child and this powerful king, making promises to each other in my tiny shop, something in my chest cracked open. Caius stood, but his attention had shifted to me. "You're angry." "Of course I'm angry. She's 6 years old." 7, Lyra corrected. 7, I amended. "And they were going to send her away from everything she knows, everyone she loves, for political leverage. How could I not be angry?" "I meant you're angry at me." I opened my mouth to deny it, then realized he was right. Some part of me was angry at him, even though he'd said he didn't know, because he should have known, because it happened in his kingdom, under his rule. "I'm angry at the system," I said carefully, "at a world where children are commodities." "So am I." His hands had curled into fists at his sides. "I failed her. I should have been watching closer, should have known what my council was plotting." He looked at Lyra, and the rawness in his expression made my breath catch. "I'm sorry, I should have protected you better." The vulnerability in those words, the genuine regret, diffused my anger like water on flame. I reached out without thinking, my hand finding his wrist, wrapping around it. He went utterly still beneath my touch, and I felt his pulse hammering against my fingers. "You're protecting her now," I said quietly. "That's what matters." He stared at my hand on his arm like he'd never been touched before, like he didn't know what to do with gentleness. "Caius," I said, and his eyes snapped to mine. "You're protecting her now." "Yes," he breathed. "I am." The moment stretched between us, heavy with things neither of us knew how to say. Then Lyra yawned loud and exaggerated, and the spell broke. "I'm hungry," she announced. Again. I pulled my hand back, suddenly very aware of how close Caius and I were standing, of the way his attention felt like sunlight concentrated through glass. "I'll make breakfast," I said, my voice not quite steady. "You should. Stay. If you want." "I want." The way he said it made heat pool low in my belly. This was dangerous. This was so dangerous. But I couldn't seem to make myself care. He insisted on escorting us later that day. Lyra needed fresh air, needed to move, and I needed to restock my supply of yarrow that only grew near the northern edge of town, close to the forest border. I'd planned to go alone, or rather, just with Lyra, but when Caius discovered this, he'd simply said no, in a tone that brooked no argument. "It's not safe," he'd said. "Not with tensions running high. Not with council members who might be unhappy about my decision regarding Lyra." He had a point. I hated that he had a point. So we walked together through Willowmere in the late morning sun, the Alpha King, a runaway pup, and a human apothecary. People stared. Of course they stared. Some bowed. Others just watched with wide eyes and whispered behind their hands. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like I was on display. Then Caius's hand settled at the small of my back, just a light touch, barely there but present, grounding, claiming. The whispers got louder. I glanced up at him, but he was looking straight ahead, his expression calm and unreadable. Only the slight tension in his jaw betrayed that he was aware of the attention we were drawing. "You don't have to do that," I murmured. "Do what?" "Touch me. People are talking." "Let them talk." His hand didn't move. "Does it bother you?" "Yes." "No." I didn't know. It felt too good. Too right. Too dangerous. "I don't want to cause problems for you," I said instead. He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Iris, you are a problem for me. The most complicated, fascinating problem I've ever encountered." He paused. "And I find I don't want to solve it." I had no idea what to say to that, so I focused on Lyra, who was skipping ahead of us, chasing butterflies and pretending she wasn't listening to every word we said. We'd almost reached the northern edge when a young man stepped into our path. He was handsome in a rough sort of way, with sandy hair and an easy smile. A beta, if I was reading the subtle deference in his posture correctly. He bowed to Caius quick and respectful, then turned that smile on me. "Iris, I was hoping I'd run into you." I blinked. "Marcus, hello. I've been meaning to stop by your shop. My mother's arthritis has been acting up again, and your salve worked wonders last time." His eyes crinkled at the corners. "Maybe I could come by later? We could discuss the treatment over dinner?" Oh no. I felt Caius go very still beside me. The hand at my back pressed fractionally harder, a possessive weight that made my skin prickle with awareness. "I'm afraid Iris is quite busy at the moment," Caius said, his voice perfectly pleasant and absolutely terrifying. "Perhaps you could visit the shop during normal hours, for medical purposes only." Marcus's smile faltered. He glanced between us, and I watched the exact moment understanding dawned in his eyes. They went wide, and he took a step back. "Of course, Your Majesty. I didn't mean I wasn't." "I'm sure you weren't," Caius agreed, still in that pleasant, deadly tone. "Run along now, Marcus." It wasn't a suggestion. Marcus fled. I waited until he was out of earshot, then looked up at Caius. "That was subtle." "I don't do subtle." "Clearly. You practically growled at him." "I did not growl." "You did. I felt it." His jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he might actually deny it. Then his mouth twitched just barely, just enough that I caught it. "He was asking you to dinner. He was asking about his mother's arthritis medication. He was using his mother's arthritis as an excuse to ask you to dinner. There's a difference." I bit my lip to keep from smiling. "And that bothered you?" "Yes." No hesitation. No attempt to hide it. Just flat honesty that made my heart skip. "It bothered me very much." "Why?" He stopped walking and turned to face me fully. Lyra had run ahead to examine some flowers, giving us a moment of privacy. His golden eyes pinned me in place. "You know why, Iris." I did know. I'd known since yesterday in the market, since that first moment our eyes met and something fundamental shifted in my world. But hearing him almost say it out loud made it real, in a way that terrified me. "This is complicated," I whispered. "Yes. You're the Alpha King." "Yes. I'm human. I know. People will talk. They already are talking. Let them." He reached up, tucked another strand of hair behind my ear, the same gesture from last night, but slower this time, more deliberate. His fingers lingered against my cheek. "I haven't felt this alive in years. I'm not walking away from that because of gossip." My breath caught. "Caius." A scream shattered the moment. "Lyra." We both moved at the same time, but Caius was faster. He shifted mid-run. I'd never seen a shift like that, so fast it was almost instantaneous, a blur of motion and power, and his massive black wolf form ate up the ground between us and Lyra in seconds. I ran after him, my healer's bag bouncing against my hip, my heart in my throat. Lyra was backed against a tree, and 3 men in dark clothes surrounded her. Not wolves, humans, mercenaries, if I was reading the weapons correctly. Assassin. Caius hit the first one like a battering ram, and the man went down hard. The other 2 turned, and I saw their faces pale when they realized what they were facing. The Alpha King in his wolf form was a thing of nightmares. Easily twice the size of a normal wolf, all black fur and rippling muscle and teeth that gleamed white in the dappled sunlight. One of the assassins raised a crossbow. "No!" I heard myself scream, but Caius was already moving, too fast, too powerful. He took the bolt meant for Lyra in his shoulder and didn't even slow down. The fight was over in seconds. Brutal, efficient, terrifying. When he shifted back human again, breathing hard, blood on his skin, the 3 men were unconscious on the ground, and Lyra was safe. He turned to me immediately, his eyes wild. "Are you hurt?" "Me? You're the one who got shot." I rushed to him, my hands already reaching for the bolt still embedded in his shoulder. It was silver-tipped. I could see the distinctive gleam, and his skin around the wound was already starting to redden and blister. "It's nothing," he said, but I could hear the pain threading through his voice. "It's silver, you idiot. It's not nothing." I was already digging in my bag for tweezers and cloth. "Sit down before you fall down. I need to secure the prisoners first. Sit down." For a wonder, he actually listened. Maybe it was the shock. Maybe it was the pain. Maybe it was something in my voice that reminded him I knew what I was doing when it came to wounds. I worked quickly. Extracting the bolt, he made one harsh sound in his throat but otherwise didn't react, and cleaning the wound with alcohol that had to burn like fire. The silver had done damage, preventing his natural healing from kicking in properly. "This is going to scar," I said quietly, pressing clean cloth against the bleeding. "I have others. That's not the point." My hands were shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. "You could have been killed. You just threw yourself in front of a silver-tipped bolt without even thinking. You think I was going to let them hurt her?" His hand came up, catching my wrist gently. "You think I was going to let them hurt you? I wasn't in danger. They wanted Lyra. You were standing right next to her, Iris. If that bolt had missed me, if I hadn't been fast enough." His grip tightened fractionally. I won't." He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I looked down and realized his other hand had moved to my throat, his fingers resting against my pulse point. Not threatening, just feeling. Confirming I was alive, I was whole, I was here. "I'm okay," I whispered. "We're both okay." His eyes searched mine, and the intensity in them stole my breath. We were so close. Close enough that I could see the flecks of amber in his gold irises, the faint stubble on his jaw, the way his lips parted slightly as he stared at my mouth. He leaned in. I leaned in. Our faces were inches apart, hearts beating in sync. The whole world narrowed down to this moment, this Lyra coughed. Loud, deliberate, impossibly timed. We sprang apart like guilty teenagers, and I saw Caius drag a hand through his hair, frustration and amusement warring on his face. "She has terrible timing," I muttered under my breath. I heard him laugh quiet and rough, and when I looked up, he was watching me with an expression that made my toes curl in my boots. "To be continued," he said softly. "A promise." Then he was standing, shifting back into business mode, calling for his warriors who'd apparently been shadowing us the whole time. They materialized from the forest like ghosts, securing the unconscious assassins, checking the perimeter. But before he fully withdrew into his Alpha King mask, he caught my hand, pressed his lips to my knuckles in a gesture so old-fashioned and so devastatingly intimate that I forgot how to breathe. "Thank you," he said against my skin, "for caring whether I get hurt." Then he was gone, striding away to deal with the aftermath, leaving me standing there with Lyra and a heart that was beating far too fast. Lyra looked up at me with those knowing amber eyes. "You like him?" she said. "Not a question." I sighed. "Yeah, sweetheart. I think I do." "Good. He likes you too. A lot. Like a scary amount." "How do you know?" She grinned, showing her small fangs. "I told you. I see things." And watching Caius across the clearing, watching the way his eyes kept finding me even while he interrogated prisoners and organized his warriors, I realized she was right. This thing between us, whatever it wasn't one-sided. It wasn't safe. It probably wasn't smart, but it was real. And I was in so far over my head I couldn't even see the surface anymore. The council chamber was everything I expected and nothing I was prepared for. Ancient stone walls carved with scenes of wolves running under full moons. A circular table of dark wood worn smooth by centuries of hands. Torches casting flickering shadows that made the carved wolves seem to move. And around that table, 12 of the most powerful wolves in the Northern Territories, all watching me with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. I was the only human in the room. Caius sat at the head of the table, and I stood beside him, not behind. He'd made that clear when we entered, had pulled out the chair next to his own. the one traditionally reserved for the Alpha King's mate or closest advisor, and waited until I sat before taking his own seat. The message was unmistakable. The council members' reactions had been equally clear. Shock, disapproval. One older woman with silver threading through her dark hair had actually hissed. Now, 3 hours into the hearing, the tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. "The human has no place here," Councilman Darius was saying. Again, he was one of the three who'd plotted to send Lyra away, a tall, thin man with cold eyes and a voice like gravel. "This is pack business. She has no authority, no standing." "She has my authority," Caius interrupted, his voice cutting through Darius's words like a blade. "She stands where I place her. Or are you questioning my judgment?" Darius's jaw clenched, but he bowed his head. "You didn't openly challenge the Alpha King. Not if you wanted to keep your position. Or your head. Of course not, Your Majesty. I merely point out that the situation is irregular." "Irregular." Caius leaned back in his chair, and I felt the dangerous edge in his deceptive calm. An interesting word choice, considering you and your allies committed treason. The room went deathly silent. "Treason is a strong accusation," Councilwoman Vera said carefully. She was the silver-haired woman, her face a map of wrinkles that spoke of a long life. Perhaps Councilman Darius and the others acted imprudently, but their intentions were for the good of the pack. Their intentions, I heard myself say, and every eye in the room snapped to me, were to use a 7-year-old child as a political bargaining chip, to send her away from her family, her home, everything she knows, without her consent or her mother's knowledge. You want to call that something other than treason? Fine. But let's not pretend it was done for anyone's good except their own. The silence that followed my words was absolute. I'd just spoken against council members. In their own chamber. Me, a human with no rank, no pack, no right to be here at all. Caius's hand found mine under the table. Squeezed once. Warning or support, I couldn't tell. Darius's face had gone red. "How dare you, a wolfless human, presume to lecture this council on pack matters? You know nothing of our ways, our needs, the sacrifices required to maintain peace between territories. I know children shouldn't be sacrificed for politics." I kept my voice steady, calm, met his glare without flinching. "I know that if your way of maintaining peace requires traumatizing 7-year-olds, then maybe your way is broken." "Enough," Caius said quietly, but the word carried weight that made everyone straighten in their seats. "Iris speaks truth. Uncomfortable truth, perhaps, but truth nonetheless." He stood, and the room seemed to shrink around him. "Councilman Darius, Councilman Reed, Councilwoman Marin, you conspired to arrange a political marriage for a child without bringing the matter before me or this full council. You exceeded your authority. You betrayed my trust and the trust of Lyra's family. We sought to strengthen alliances," Reed began, but Caius cut him off with a gesture. "You sought to consolidate your own power by currying favor with the Eastern Pack. Don't insult my intelligence by claiming altruism." His golden eyes were molten. "Here is my judgment. You are stripped of your council positions, effective immediately. You will spend the next year in service to the families you harmed, including Lyra's mother, who will determine what form that service takes. And if I hear of any further plotting, any whisper of schemes or manipulation, I will not be so lenient a second time. Am I clear?" All three of them had gone pale. Being stripped of council positions was a massive loss of status, of power. It was political death, but it wasn't actual death, which Caius could have ordered for treason. They bowed their heads, murmured their acceptance, and were escorted from the chamber by guards. When they were gone, Vera cleared her throat. "Your Majesty, regarding the human, her name is Iris." His voice had gone very soft, very dangerous. "Use it." Vera's eyes widened fractionally, but she inclined her head. "Regarding Iris, then, her presence here is already causing talk. If she continues to stand at your side, to be seen with you publicly, to wield influence over pack matters, the implications will be difficult to ignore." "What implications?" I asked, even though I knew, even though I'd been trying not to think about it. Vera looked at me directly for the first time. Not hostile exactly. More assessing. That you are the Alpha King's chosen mate. The words hung in the air like smoke. And if she is? Caius asked quietly. Oh gods, he wasn't denying it. He was asking what they'd do if it were true. My heart was a wild thing trying to break free of my chest. Vera studied us both for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. Then I would say it's about time you chose someone with sense and courage instead of politics and pedigree. But, Your Majesty, you must know the challenges this will bring. The other packs will have opinions. Some will see it as weakness, choosing a human over an alliance marriage. Others will see it as a threat to tradition. I don't care what they see. He looked at me, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. I care what's true. And the truth is that I will not let politics dictate who I... He stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. Who I choose to keep close. The careful phrasing didn't hide what he meant, what he was offering. Everything. He was offering me everything, and I had no idea if I was brave enough to take it. There's also the matter of her safety. Another councilman spoke up, Marcus, not to be confused with the beta from earlier. Those assassins today were clearly hired by someone. If Iris is seen as important to you, she becomes a target. She's already a target, Caius said flatly. She became one the moment she protected Lyra, the moment she lied to my face in the marketplace and I let her. He turned to address the full council. Iris is under my personal protection. Anyone who harms her, threatens her, or even looks at her wrong will answer to me directly. Spread that word. Make it very clear. The possessiveness in his tone sent heat racing down my spine. Your Majesty, Vera began, this is not a discussion. It's a declaration. He was still looking at me, even though he was speaking to them. Iris has proven herself worthy of my trust, my respect, and my protection. That's all any of you need to know. I should have been embarrassed. Should have been uncomfortable with being discussed like this, with having my worth debated by a council of powerful wolves. But all I felt was a fierce surge of pride that he would stand up for me like this, that he would claim me so publicly, so absolutely, without hesitation or apology. The council murmured among themselves, but I could see the acceptance settling over most of them. They might not like it, might not understand it, but they wouldn't openly challenge their king. Not over me. Caius dismissed them shortly after, and then it was just the two of us in that ancient chamber, surrounded by shadows and the weight of decisions made. You didn't have to do that, I said quietly. Yes, I did. He turned to face me fully, and I could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. Iris, I need you to understand something. Those implications Vera mentioned, they're not just talk. By standing with me like this, by being at my side, you're stepping into something that will change your life completely. People will have expectations. There will be pressure, danger, politics you never asked for. He dragged a hand through his hair. If you want to walk away, if this is too much. I pressed my fingers to his lips, stopping the words. Don't, I whispered. Don't give me an escape route when we both know I won't take it. His hand came up, covering mine, pressing my palm against his mouth. I felt his breath warm against my skin, felt the way he trembled, actually trembled at the contact. You should take it, he murmured against my hand. You should run far away from me and this mess. Probably. I didn't move. But I'm not going to. Why not? Because I was falling for him. Because when he looked at me, I felt seen for the first time in my life. Because the thought of not seeing him tomorrow made my chest ache in ways I didn't have words for. But I wasn't brave enough to say those things yet. Not out loud. So instead I said, because someone needs to make sure you don't get yourself killed by silver-tipped bolts. You're clearly terrible at self-preservation. He laughed soft and rough and painfully genuine and pulled me against him. Not demanding, not possessive, just holding. His arms wrapped around me, and I felt the tension drain from his body as I melted into the embrace. I've made your life complicated, he said into my hair. Yes, I'm not sorry. Good. I'd worry about you if you were. We stood like that for a long moment, just breathing together, finding comfort in proximity. Then he pulled back enough to look at me, and the vulnerability in his face made my heart clench. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to really hear me." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "I've been alone for a very long time, Iris. Surrounded by people, yes. Respected, feared, obeyed. But alone in the ways that matter. I stopped believing I'd ever find someone who looked at me and saw beyond the crown, beyond the power. Someone who would tell me I'm being an idiot when I need to hear it." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "And then you stepped in front of a runaway pup and lied to my face, and I thought, maybe there's someone brave enough, stubborn enough, reckless enough to—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "To what?" I whispered. "To matter. To make me feel like more than just a king. Oh gods. Caius, I'm terrified," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I'm terrified of how much I already care about you, of how fast this is happening, of what it means that I would rather face assassins at your side than be safe without you." "I know." His forehead came to rest against mine, and we shared breath in the space between us. "I'm terrified too." "You are?" "Terrified that I'm not enough. That being with me will break something beautiful in you. That one day you'll wake up and realize you gave up your quiet, peaceful life for this chaos and you'll regret it." I pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard you say. And you once told me you don't drink tea." He blinked. Then that slow, devastating smile spread across his face. "You remember that. I remember everything about you, which is either romantic or a medical concern. I haven't decided which yet." His hands framed my face, thumbs stroking my cheeks with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so powerful. "If you ask me to walk away," he said softly, "if you tell me this is too much, too fast, too complicated, I will. I swear it. I'll protect you from a distance, make sure you're safe, but I'll give you space. Your choice matters more than what I want." The offer was genuine. I could see it in his eyes, feel it in the way he held me like something precious that might shatter. He would walk away if I asked, would tear his own heart out to give me what I needed, which was exactly why I couldn't ask. "Stay," I breathed. "Please stay." The relief that flooded his expression was so profound it hurt to witness. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." He kissed my forehead, soft and reverent, and I felt something settle in my chest, something that felt like rightness, like coming home. We stayed like that until a guard knocked to tell us Lyra was asking for me, breaking the spell of the moment but not erasing it. It would never be erased now. 3 days later, everything went to hell. The corrupt council faction, because of course it was bigger than just those 3, made their move. It started with poisoned wine at a pack gathering. Caius didn't drink it, thank the gods, but 2 of his loyal guards did and barely survived. Then came the fire at the northern border patrol house, clearly arson, clearly meant to divide his forces. And then came word of a coordinated attack being planned. Multiple targets: the pack house, the council chamber, and my shop. Caius came to me at dawn, still in his armor from the night's patrol, exhaustion and fury warring in his face. "You need to leave Willowmere," he said without preamble. "Today. Now." I was grinding herbs, of course I was. It's what I did when I was anxious and my hands stilled. "No, Iris, this isn't a request. They're targeting you specifically. They know you matter to me, and they will use that. So you want me to run? To hide while you face this alone? I want you alive." The words exploded out of him, raw and desperate. "I can't focus on stopping them if I'm terrified every second that you're in danger. I can't." His voice cracked. Please just go somewhere safe until this is over." I turned to face him fully, and saw the truth of it in his eyes. He was scared. Actually scared. "For me, where would I go?" I asked quietly. "I have a cabin, deep in the western woods. Isolated, defensible. I'll send guards with you, my best warriors. You and Lyra will be safe there." Lyra. He was still including her in my safety, still making sure we were both protected. "How long?" I asked. "A week. Maybe 2. however long it takes to root out the remaining conspirators and make sure the threat is eliminated. 2 weeks without seeing him. 2 weeks of not knowing if he was safe, if he was hurt, if he was... I couldn't think about that. And you trust me to keep her safe? I asked. To take Lyra and protect her while you handle this? His eyes softened. I trust you with everything that matters to me, Iris. With her, with my heart, with my life, if it came to it. The declaration hit me like a physical blow. I'm scared, I admitted. Scared of leaving you. Scared something will happen, and I won't be here. I know, but I'm more scared of you staying and getting killed because of me. He stepped closer, cupped my face in his hands. This is temporary. A week, 2 at most, and then you come back. I come back. We figure out what this thing between us is and where it goes. But you have to be alive for that to happen. He was right. I hated it, but he was right. If I stayed, I'd be a liability, a target he'd have to constantly protect instead of focusing on the real threat. But if I left, if I took Lyra somewhere safe, you'll be able to fight without worrying, I said slowly. Yes, you'll be able to do what needs to be done. Yes, I nodded, decision crystallizing. Okay, we'll go. But Caius, I gripped his wrists, held his gaze. You come back to me. Whatever it takes, whoever you have to fight, you survive and you come back. I swear it. He kissed me then, deep and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of me. 2 weeks, Iris. Just 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I agreed against his lips. He helped me pack, helped me wake Lyra and explain in simple terms that we were going on a trip, that it was temporary, that everything would be okay. Lyra, bless her, just nodded and held my hand. 6 of his best warriors escorted us, 3 in wolf form ranging ahead, 3 in human form surrounding the wagon. The cabin was exactly as he'd described, isolated, well-stocked, defensible. Before he left to return to the capital, Caius pulled me aside one last time. If anything happens, he started, but I pressed my fingers to his lips. Nothing will happen. You're too stubborn to die, and I'm too stubborn to let you. He caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my palm. When this is over, when you come back, we need to talk. Really talk. About what this is, what we want it to be. I already know what I want, I whispered. What? You. However I can have you. Whatever form that takes. His eyes closed and I saw his throat work. 2 weeks, love. Just survive 2 weeks for me. Love. He'd called me love. You too. I managed around the lump in my throat. Then he was gone, riding back toward danger and enemies and a battle I couldn't help him fight. I stood at the cabin window long after he'd disappeared from sight, Lyra's small hand in mine. He'll come back, she said quietly. He promised. Yes, I agreed. He will. Because love, I realized as I watched the forest where he'd vanished. Love was choosing to let him go even when every instinct screamed to hold on. Love was trusting him to fight his battles while I protected what he'd entrusted to me. Love was believing in 2 weeks, in promises, in the strength of what we'd found in such a short time. Love was knowing he would return. He had to, because the alternative was unthinkable, and I refused to think it. The days at the cabin blurred together in a rhythm of survival and waiting. I established routines because routines kept fear at bay. Morning walks with Lyra to check the perimeter always with 2 guards shadowing us. Afternoon lessons where I taught her about herbs and healing while she taught me wolf pack dynamics in that brutally honest way children have. Evenings by the fire. Reading from the small collection of books Caius had somehow known to stock the cabin with. The nights were harder. That's when the silence pressed in, when my mind conjured every worst-case scenario. Caius injured, bleeding, alone. Caius overwhelmed by enemies. Caius making a choice between his life and his crown and choosing the wrong one. I'd lie awake listening to Lyra's steady breathing and the guards' quiet movements outside, and I'd press my hand to my chest where an ache had taken up permanent residence. Missing someone, I discovered, was a physical sensation, like a hook lodged behind your ribs, pulling constantly toward something you couldn't reach. On the 8th day, One of the guards, a stern woman named Kara, came to find me while I was harvesting wild rosemary near the cabin. "Message from the capital," she said, her expression carefully neutral. My heart stopped. "Is he alive? Victorious? He's begun dismantling the corruption network." She handed me a sealed letter, and I recognized Caius's handwriting on the front. "He says to tell you 3 more days. 4 at most. He's being thorough." Relief hit me so hard my knees went weak. I sat down right there in the dirt and pressed the letter to my chest, not even opening it yet, just feeling the weight of it. He was alive. He was safe. He was coming. "Thank you," I managed. Kara's expression softened fractionally. "He wouldn't rest until he could send word. Kept saying you'd worry. Drove his advisors mad, apparently." I laughed through the tears suddenly streaming down my face. That sounded exactly like him. When I finally opened the letter, his words were brief but achingly familiar. "Iris, it's done. The conspirators are captured or dead. The pack is secure. I'm working on reforms now, restructuring the council, implementing checks on power, making sure this can never happen again. It's tedious. I hate it. I'd rather be there. 3 more days. I'm counting hours. Don't make any decisions about us until I can ask you properly. See." I read it 17 times before I finally folded it and tucked it against my heart. 3 more days. I could survive 3 more days. He arrived on the 10th day, at sunset, when the sky was painted in shades of amber and rose that reminded me of his eyes. I was outside with Lyra, teaching her to identify edible mushrooms, when I felt that shift in the air that meant he was near. The guards straightened to attention, and Lyra's head snapped up, her nose twitching as she caught his scent. "He's here!" she squealed, and took off running toward the tree line. I followed more slowly, my heart hammering, torn between wanting to sprint to him and being terrified of what I'd find. Was he hurt? Had the battle marked him in ways I couldn't heal? He emerged from the forest on horseback, and the sight of him stole my breath. He looked exhausted. Shadows under his eyes, new lines of strain around his mouth, his clothes dusty from hard travel. But he was whole, alive, here. His eyes found mine, and the expression that crossed his face, relief and hunger, and something so tender it made my chest ache, nearly brought me to my knees. Lyra reached him first, and he dismounted in one fluid motion to catch her as she launched herself at him. He swept her up, held her close, murmured something in her ear that made her giggle. Then he set her down gently and looked at me over her head. We moved at the same time. I'm not sure who closed the distance first. One moment we were separate, the next I was in his arms and he was holding me so tightly I could barely breathe, and I didn't care about anything except that he was real and solid and safe. "You're okay," I kept saying against his chest. "You're okay. You're okay. So are you. Thank the gods. So are you." His face buried in my hair, breathing me in like I was air and he'd been drowning. "I hated every second of being away from you. Every single second." "Me too." We stood like that while the sun set and the stars emerged, and Lyra tactfully went inside with the guards to give us privacy. Finally, he pulled back enough to cut my face, studying me like he was cataloging every detail to memory. His thumb traced the dark circles under my eyes. "You didn't sleep. Neither did you." I was busy dismantling a conspiracy and restructuring pack governance. "What's your excuse?" "Worrying about an idiot king who keeps throwing himself in front of danger." His smile was exhausted but genuine. "Your idiot king." "Yes," I whispered. "Mine." Something flared in his eyes at the possessive claim. "Iris, we need to talk, but first I need to do this." He kissed me. Not the desperate, frantic kisses from before. This was slow, thorough, reverent. A kiss that tasted like promises and homecoming and forever. I melted into it, my hands fisting in his shirt, and for a perfect moment the world was exactly right. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Inside," he murmured. "We should go inside. I need to tell you what happened, what changes I made, what it means for us. The guards gave us the main room while they took watch outside. Lyra had fallen asleep on the small cot near the fire, exhausted from excitement. Caius and I sat close together on the worn couch, his hand clasped around mine like he couldn't bear to not be touching me. "Tell me," I said softly. "All of it." He did. The battle had been brutal but decisive. The main conspirators were in custody, awaiting trial. But more than just stopping the immediate threat, Caius had used the crisis to force through reforms the old guard had resisted for years. "I restructured the council," he explained, his voice low so as not to wake Lyra. "Added term limits, created oversight committees, gave lower-ranked pack members representation, made it so no small group can ever again wield that much unchecked power." How did the traditionalists take it? About as well as you'd expect. Lots of angry speeches about tradition and order and how I'm destroying everything our ancestors built. He smiled wryly. But I had public support. Turns out people like it when their king actually tries to protect them instead of just using them. I squeezed his hand. "I'm proud of you." His eyes closed briefly, like the words hit somewhere deep. "I consulted your notes." I blinked. "My what?" "The notes you left in the shop. Your observations about pack dynamics, pack hierarchies, the problems you'd noticed with how lower-ranked wolves were treated. I had someone retrieve them, and I used them when drafting the reforms." He looked at me intently. "Your perspective, an outsider who sees clearly because you're not bound by tradition, it was invaluable. I want to keep using it. I want your insight, your honesty, your willingness to tell me when I'm wrong." My heart was doing complicated things in my chest. "Caius, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't want you to just be safe. I want you to be part of this, part of the reforms, part of the governance, part of building something better." He shifted to face me more fully. "But I need you to understand what that means. If you stand with me publicly, if we make this official, you'll be choosing a life that's not what you wanted. Not the quiet shop, not the peaceful existence. You'll be choosing politics and danger and responsibility you never asked for. I know, and people will have opinions. Some will accept a human mate for their king. Others won't. It won't be easy. I know that too." He studied me, searching for doubt, for hesitation. "Then why aren't you running?" I looked at Lyra, sleeping peacefully by the fire. Looked at Caius, this powerful, complicated man who'd somehow become the center of my world. Thought about the past 10 days and how empty they'd felt without him, how much I'd missed not just his presence but his voice, his insight, the way he made me feel like I could be more than I'd ever imagined. "Because," I said slowly, "I spent 3 years telling myself I didn't need more than my quiet life, that I was happy with my herbs and my solitude and my safe, predictable days. And I was happy. Or I thought I was. But then you walked into my world, and I realized I'd been settling for contentment when I could have had joy." His breath caught. "You make me want to be brave, Caius. You make me want to fight for things that matter, to use my voice even when it's hard, to believe I can make a difference. You make me want to be someone worthy of standing beside you." "You already are," he said roughly. "Iris, you already are. Then ask me. Whatever you came here to ask me properly." For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then, slowly, deliberately, he slid off the couch and onto one knee. My heart stopped. "This isn't how this is usually done," he said, a slight tremor in his voice. "Usually, in our culture, the alpha claims their mate, declares it publicly, makes it a fact, but I don't want to claim you like a possession. I don't want to decide your future without your consent." He took both my hands in his, and I could feel the calluses on his palms, the slight trembling that betrayed his nerves. "So I'm asking, Iris. Choosing is important to you, so I'm giving you a choice. Choose me. Be my mate, my partner, my equal in all things. Help me build something better than what we inherited. Stand beside me not because I commanded it, but because you want to. Because this thing between us, this impossible, complicated, beautiful thing is worth fighting for." Tears were streaming down my face. "And if I say yes, then we bond. Properly." The wolf way, which is permanent and powerful, and will tie us together in ways I can't fully explain. You'll feel what I feel. I'll feel what you feel. We'll be separate but connected, two halves of something stronger than either of us alone. His grip tightened on my hands. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it. I could barely see him through my tears, could barely breathe past the emotion clogging my throat. But I could speak. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I choose you. I choose this. I choose us. The smile that broke across his face was incandescent. He stood, pulling me up with him, and then his mouth was on mine, and the kiss was everything, joy and relief and promise and homecoming all at once. And then I felt it. A warmth that started in my chest and spread outward, like sunlight from the inside. It didn't hurt. It felt like the opposite of hurt, like every lonely place in my soul suddenly had company, like I'd been walking around only half present, and suddenly became completely real. I gasped against his mouth, and he pulled back just enough to rest his forehead against mine. That's the bond, he murmured. Do you feel it? Yes. I could feel him. Not thoughts exactly, but emotions. His relief, his love, his fierce protective instinct. And underneath it all, a steady warmth that felt like home. Oh God's Caius, I can feel you. And I can feel you. Your joy. Your love. His voice cracked. Your certainty. You're not afraid. No, I realized with wonder. I'm not afraid at all. We stood there in the firelight, forehead to forehead, breathing in sync, feeling the bond settle between us like it had always been there, just waiting for us to claim it. From her cot, Lyra made a sleepy sound. Finally, I thought you'd never ask her properly. We both laughed, the sound breaking the intense emotion into something lighter, easier. You were awake? Caius asked. Obviously. You're not exactly quiet. She sat up, grinning. Does this mean Iris is staying forever? And I can stay with her? Caius looked at me, and I felt his question through the bond before he spoke it aloud. Yes, I said firmly. If you want to, Lyra, you can stay with us. With me. Always. She launched herself off the cot and wrapped her arms around my waist. I want to. I want to so much. I held her close. This child who'd chosen me in a moment of desperation and somehow given me a family I'd never known I needed. Over her head, Caius was watching us with an expression of such profound contentment it made my heart ache. We're really doing this, he said softly. We really are. You're going to be spectacular. As my mate. As Lyra's mother. As yourself. We'll see. I might be terrible at politics. Impossible. You told off my entire council your first day. You'll be brilliant. I laughed, and through the bond, I felt his joy echoing my own. This was real. This was happening. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. 2 years later, the garden behind the pack house was my favorite place in the entire compound. I'd designed it myself, a sprawling collection of medicinal herbs, flowering plants, and quiet corners where people could come to heal or simply find peace. The roses were blooming today, their scent heavy on the summer air, and I was elbow-deep in soil, transplanting new moonflower seedlings. Mama! Lyra's voice rang out across the garden. Mama, watch this! I looked up to find her 9 now, all gangly limbs and wild dark hair preparing to shift. She'd been practicing, getting better at the control required for clean transformations. She closed her eyes, concentrated, and then there she was, a beautiful wolf pup with dark fur and those distinctive amber eyes. Perfect, I called, clapping my dirt-covered hands. Your control is getting so much better. She shifted back, grinning with pride. Papa says if I keep practicing, I can start training with the older kids next month. Papa. She'd started calling Caius that about 6 months ago, tentatively at first, like she was afraid he'd correct her. Instead, he'd picked her up, held her close, and told her he'd be honored to be her papa if she wanted him to be. I'd cried for an hour. Speaking of your papa, I said, wiping my hands on my apron, where is he? Council meeting. But he said he'd be done soon. Said to tell you he's counting minutes again." She rolled her eyes with all the exasperation of a child who didn't yet understand romance. "You two are so weird about each other. Just wait until you're older. You'll understand." Gross. I'm never getting all moony-eyed over anyone." I laughed. "We'll see." She ran off to play with the other pack children, her laughter carrying across the garden, and I went back to my transplanting with a smile on my face. The past 2 years had been everything Caius warned me they would be: complicated, challenging, sometimes exhausting. There had been pushback against his reforms, political maneuvering I had to learn to navigate, and yes, there were still those who disapproved of a human as the Alpha King's mate. But there had also been joy. So much joy. I'd opened a new apothecary in the pack house, offering healing to anyone who needed it, regardless of rank or status. I'd started training others, both wolves and humans, in herbal medicine. I'd found my voice in council meetings, learned to stand my ground against wolves who'd been in power for decades. And through it all, Caius had been beside me, supporting, encouraging, sometimes pulling me back when I pushed too hard, always making sure I knew I was valued not just as his mate but as myself. The bond between us had only deepened. I could feel him now, his presence like a warm constant in my chest, his emotions painting the edges of my own, and I knew he felt me the same way. Knew that even in the middle of a tense council meeting, he was aware of my contentment as I worked in my garden. "There you are." I looked up to find him standing at the garden gate, still in his formal council clothes but with his shirt untucked and his hair disheveled from running his hands through it. "Rough meeting?" I asked. "You could say that. Marcus wanted to increase border patrols again. Vera argued about budget allocation for the new school. Someone brought up succession planning, which I firmly shut down because we've been mated for 2 years and I'm not having that conversation yet." I smiled and walked over to him, leaving dirty handprints on his expensive shirt when I cupped his face. He didn't even flinch. "You know they just want security. Want to know the line of succession is clear." "I know, but I like having you to myself for a while longer before we have to think about heirs and all that comes with it." He turned his head, pressed a kiss to my palm. "How was your day?" "Good. Planted moonflowers. Lyra showed me her shift control. Mrs. Henderson's granddaughter came by for more of that salve for her eczema. So a normal day. A perfect day." Through the bond, I felt his contentment wrap around mine like an embrace. "Caius?" I said softly. "Mem? Do you ever regret it? Choosing me? Making things more complicated than they had to be?" He pulled back to look at me seriously. "Never. Not once. Not even for a second." His hands framed my face. "You made me remember what it feels like to be human, Iris. Not just a king, not just an alpha, but a person who can love and be loved. Who can build a family, not just rule a pack." He kissed my forehead. "You gave me everything that matters." From across the garden, Lyra called out, "Are you two being gross again? Because I'm trying to play and your feelings are really loud through the pack bond." We laughed, and I felt the echo of amusement from other pack members who were apparently also picking up on our emotional broadcast. "Sorry," I called back. "We'll tone it down." "You better. It's like having a romance novel playing in my head." Caius grinned, unrepentant. "She's not wrong. No, she's really not." He took my hand, lacing our fingers together, dirt and all, and we stood there watching Lyra play with the other children, watching the garden grow, watching the life we'd built together flourish. "Do you remember the first time you saw her?" he asked quietly. "When she ran into you in the marketplace?" "Every second. She crashed into me crying, 'Hide me,' and I didn't even think. I just knew. I had to protect her. You protected us both that day, protected her from whatever she was running from, protected me from a life where I never got to feel this." He squeezed my hand. "She ran to you for safety, and somehow, we all found home." I looked at him, this king who knelt to ask instead of commanded, this man who loved fiercely and protected even more fiercely, this person who'd become my whole world and felt the bond between us pulse with warmth. "Yeah," I whispered, leaning into his embrace. "We really did." And there in our garden, with Lyra's laughter echoing through the air and the pack bonds humming with contentment around us. I finally understood what I'd been missing all those years in my quiet shop. Not peace. Home. Real, messy, complicated, beautiful home. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Thank you for listening to another emotional, magical shifter romance here on Tina Romance Library. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, so you never miss more powerful, heart-gripping romance stories.